Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to get started in about 2 or 3 minutes. Right, good afternoon, everybody. I think we've still got a few people just joining the meeting at the moment, but we'll get started. It's just gone 2 o'clock, so we'll stick to schedule. So welcome to our webinar around Office 365. My name's Phil Denham. I'm the Commercial Director here at HPP. I'm joined by Tony Pearson, who's the Operations Director here at HPP.
Hello, everyone.
And what we're going to be doing today is talking about getting the most from your subscription around Office 365. Now, a few of you may have seen the webinars we've been doing. This comes into a week of webinars, all focused around that new year. So hopefully you've started a new year, you're fresh and ready to go and want to look at ways to improve your business, to do things better. So hopefully the things that we put together give you some ideas around that. And obviously our focus today is around making this, getting the most out of what you've potentially already got in your Office 365 subscription. If you want to ask questions, there is a little Q&A section within the system that you're using. So if you do have any questions, pop them in there. Unless we spot them as we go along, chances are we'll pick up all the questions at the end and we'll answer them in one big go, if that's okay. So what we're going to cover today is 5 areas of Office 365 that we think most people aren't using or aren't getting the most from. Now, we are using all of these now at HBP and Cameron, so we are going to use ourselves today as a little bit of a case study. We're going to talk about our experience of them and share some tips and some guidance around what we've learned along the way of implementing these, give you some ideas around how you could use them in your organisation, and obviously some ideas around how to launch them and get them going kind of successfully as well. And this is a bit of a kind of walk before you run example. So we're going to talk about these from scratch as if you've not used them before, or as if you've kind of had a little play with them but really not got them up and running within your business. So you should be reasonably familiar with some of the names of these apps if you've been using Office 365. If you go into your browser and you click on those little squares those little dots in the top left corner, you're presented with a menu of all of your applications. So the ones that we're going to be going through today are Yammer, OneDrive and SharePoint. We're going to go through them together. OneNote, Power BI, and Teams. So there's a few others, and you might see this menu looking slightly differently depending on what subscription you've got and what applications you use. But these are ones that hopefully you will have heard of, or you will at least recognize the names, and we're going to tell you a little bit more about what they do, how you can use them, and like I say, some tips around how to get the best out of them as well. Now, we will cover licensing at the end, or at least Tony will cover licensing at the end, who knows it better than me. So depending on the subscription you've got, you may well have all of these, or at least some of these, but we'll explain what you need to do to add them on if you've got a different subscription, and which subscriptions cover which products at the end once we've been through them. So this whole presentation is really about, as the slide says, working smarter, not harder. So trying to give your staff the tools to do their jobs better, to improve collaboration within the organisation, to improve communication, to improve management of tasks. So it's all about not really revolutionising what you're doing, but looking at more modern ways to approach things, and also giving things a rethink sometimes as well. So a new system can often be an excuse or a reason to look at your current processes and streamline them and look at how they can work even better. On one quick point, in the room we're sat in at the moment, actually this is literally just behind us, a photo took of it, but our 3 values here at HBP and Cameron, and the bottom one in particular. So of course these applications and Office 365 have been out now for a while. Do you know how long, Tony? How long Office 365 has been out?
Almost 10 years.
So
now, yeah.
Nearly 10 years. And you might wonder why we're suddenly starting to talk about these now. So we've probably been talking about these for about a year, maybe 18 months. And it's really because one of our values is all about speaking to customers and bringing products to the attention of our customers when we believe they're ready. So we've been using these products in-house now for a while. Like I say, we think we've had some of the challenges and made some of the mistakes along the way, which we'll share with you. But these products are now getting really good, and there is still some development and still some areas to improve on. But these are really now getting to be mature products that have got some great functionality in them and some really good uses within pretty much any business. So what we'll do is we'll start off with what the first product was that we actually used in-house, which is Yammer. So Yammer is in a nutshell a social media site for businesses. So it's a private social media network to be used by your organisation. And the whole idea is to bring lots of different channels of communication into a single place. So that means kind of no more notice boards, no more internal newsletters, and probably most importantly, no more of those horrible email chains that have got people replying to them left, right and centre that become impossible to follow. And let's be honest, none of us really read anyway. So it can be used for things to like share key information, things like product changes or supplier changes, maybe customer news, some success stories, or even social events within your organisation if that's the way you choose to use it. And just like Facebook or any other social media platform, the process is really familiar for users. So here's a post I made towards the end of last year, sharing some information across the company about something one of our suppliers had done, and you can see at the bottom there, people can like it, they can reply, they can share, so they can interact with this stuff really well, ask questions about it, give it the thumbs up, and start getting involved in these kind of things. And that makes it a really kind of easy access point for users to get involved with, because it's very familiar in that respect. The structure is important too. So Yammer is all managed through groups. So the way that we've approached this is to have 2 primary forms of groups, one of them being product and one of them being team. So the product one, for example, look at the Sage one there. So this is a place where anyone that's involved in the Sage products that we provide, the consultants, sales, marketing, operations, management, can all bring things to each other's attention, can discuss scenarios in that right kind of environment, that right space where they can all chip in and have conversations at the right level. And the departments, obviously, that are on there as well, or teams as we call them, are then areas where each of those teams and those people can discuss things that are just relevant to them. So kind of product agnostic in that respect, but relevant to each team. And that's worked really well for us. And depending on how your business is set up and how your business is structured, you may only want one of those 2 kind of options, product or team, but we found it works really well to divide that conversation. It means that there's structure in there, and like I say, the right level of kind of technical conversation in some of our experience can happen at the right places. It doesn't go over people's heads, and that conversation can really flow nicely. And sitting on top of all of that as well is another group called All Company. So the All Company group is kind of the default group. Typically it's used to share information relevant to anyone. So whether that's a new startup within the business, a new customer joining us, or maybe just some feedback about a team or an individual that everyone wants them to know about. Really easy to use, so primarily accessed through a web browser, but there's also an application, mobile application for it on Android and iPhone. We've really pushed that as well. We've kind of really encouraged people to get involved with the app, and what we've seen is some great engagement. You see a lot of engagement on the app, whether it be at lunchtime or even after work. You can set up notifications, so your phone buzzes or pops a little notification on the app itself to tell you if people have engaged with certain posts or posted new posts in groups that you're in. So it kind of really does make that easy again for users and really, really familiar. So onto the why to use it. So what we've seen is that communication is often a problem in business. It's a difficult one normally for one or two reasons. One, that it doesn't happen enough, or two, that there's just too many channels of information and people don't know where to look for things. So what this tries to do is create a very familiar and simple way to bring a lot of different areas of communication into one place. And it also provides that structure as well. So no longer are you copied into long emails that you really don't understand. You can go in and you can see the key bits of information, and you can let the people who need to discuss them in more detail, let them discuss them. And what that does is that gets rid of those big email chains. It's also really important that all of this can be searched and found really easily on kind of a keyword basis. So if there is relevant information that goes up there, it stays there, the conversation stays there as well. So if there's something I need to go and look at from 6 months ago that I remember happening, I can just search on Yammer and find that conversation and see exactly what took place. So we launched Yammer a while back now, maybe 2.5, even potentially 3 years ago. And truth be told, it was a tricky one to launch. So I think it took us 3 goes in the end to get it up and running. And the thing that really tipped it over and made it work for us was assigning what we call champions. So we kind of use the heads of departments within the business as our champions, and we tasked them with posting, I think it was at least twice a week on Yammer initially. So finding an excuse to post things on there, whether again it was just little updates about their team or whether it was more significant updates from suppliers. But by getting that interaction on there, it meant that other people joined in. They were tagging them in and prompting them to comment on things as well. And that was a really great way of building some traction with the platform when we launched it. One of the potential downsides or challenges with Yammer is that it is quite an open platform, so anyone can create new groups and pretty much obviously share anything, and it means that there has to be some human moderation in the process. So if you want a naming convention on your groups, as we do, and people create things that are wrong, then someone needs to be able to go in and either delete them or change them if they don't fit around the structure that you want, rather than preventing it happening in the first place, which you can't do currently. And also in terms of rules of how people communicate, what's relevant, what's acceptable on your social media platform, involves some moderation as well in that respect. Again, it depends on your staff and who's posted in there, but we found that it involves some moderation just to make sure that everything is relevant to each group. Outside of Yammer, you are going to need to communicate the purpose of it and tell people why they need to use it, the benefits of it, the sort of things that you want to go on there. That's going to have to happen through one of your traditional methods of communication initially. So through that team meetings or email or whatever it is, and say this is where we should be having these communications. And then probably most importantly, almost an ongoing process, probably something that we're still doing today, is encouraging users to keep using Yammer in every kind of other area of the business. So if someone sends me something I think is useful, I'll say to them, that's great, can you stick it on Yammer? If we finish a meeting and we've got notes from that meeting, then we'll say, right, we'll put them up on Yammer so everyone knows what's been going on. So it needs to be a really proactive process. as much as it's a piece of software, it's very much driven by the people that are using it in order to get the most out of it. And that's Yammer in a nutshell.
Yeah, I think we've covered that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so next one we're going to talk about is it's two parts of Office 365 in one, really, which is SharePoint and OneDrive, but they sit obviously very closely together in terms of their functionality. This is probably one of the biggest no-brainers when it comes to Office 365. So many of you may be using parts of this already. So hopefully this is a really easy one to understand, and we'll kind of give some tips on how we've got the most out of it. But ultimately, this is going to replace your shared network drives for file storage, and also replace kind of your personal file storage replacing something like My Documents. So quite a simple concept. The main change here is that we're going onto a web-based system for SharePoint, and we've kind of got a web synchronized version of our My Documents on OneDrive. So everything's kind of allowing us to access things wherever we are, whether that's on separate devices or separate locations, nice and easily, while still maintaining our structure and our ability to manage our files in the same way. And as this slide shows, this is in a web browser, but it is very much a case of there's a file structure in place, it's within a tiered structure above it. Probably the big difference here is the ability to check out nice and easily. So if I'm working on a specific file that I don't want anyone else to touch at that time, I can check it out, effectively lock it, and then check it back in when I'm completed. So a much better way of controlling file management on there. And above that as well, we can create teams and sections. So in the same way that you might create separate network drives for different departments, we can still manage that process when it comes to SharePoint here as well. From a file permission point of view, you can go down to file level permission, but ultimately folder level permission, or ideally team level permission, is where you want to be looking at from that perspective. Again, just like all of the areas of Office 365, this is there's an app for this. It can be accessed through a browser. It can be synchronized onto your local drives as well. So OneDrive by default will hold a local copy of files as well as synchronized into the cloud, which means if you haven't got an internet connection, you can still access them. And you can also do the same with certain parts of SharePoint as well if you need to have local copies of that as well. So again, it gives you that best of both worlds of being able to access things wherever you are, from any location, any device, but always synchronizing and using the power of the cloud in that respect as well. Okay, so why would we use it? So quite simply, it's replacing that shared network drive and My Documents. It's then utilizing this ability to access documents anywhere through the cloud. Document control is great. I've mentioned obviously file permissions, check-in, check-outs, but moving on to the next one as well, collaboration. So actually someone can open the document at the same time and work on that together. And it also means we can share documents between us as well. So rather than having lots of documents firing about by email and losing the versions of them, we can just share that one location of that document, work on it, change on it, and let the person know that we've updated it or share it with someone else. So really great way of making sure that you don't have files bouncing all over your organization, particularly an email. And in particular, I think the cost effectiveness is key here as well.
Yeah, the data storage costs on SharePoint and OneDrive are really minimum when you compare it to a network. If you've obviously got your standard network where you've got to pay for the server, you've got to pay for the storage, and then you've got backup considerations as well. Whereas by moving your data to SharePoint, you're not only getting all these benefits of available anywhere, anytime, even with or without an internet connection. It is massively cost effective, and you get huge amounts of data already included in most plans, and to bolt on considerable amounts of data is a minimal cost as well.
We're talking like terabytes in some scenarios.
Correct,
yeah, on some of the platforms as well, which for most businesses is going to be key. So again, this is one that we adopted very early. This is where we now share kind of pretty much all of our documents as a business. We share those documents between us. So we started first and foremost by looking at our existing file structures. I mentioned at the beginning, sometimes a new system is a really important way, really important time, or a good time to say, how do we do things at the moment? Is this the best way of doing them? And what we kind of found was every department kind of had a slightly different file structure, and they were saving things in one place. And finding files was a real nightmare, even if you thought you knew where you were going. So what we did is we did it on, I think we did it on a big whiteboard initially, and we drew up and said, this is what everything should look like. And that created the structure of when we moved everything over onto SharePoint, which was a really, really important part of the process. We then, like we said, we rolled that out across all the departments. Again, I should be able to go into any department in the organisation and know what that basic file structure is, so I can access things and find my way around them. It's a good time as well to review permissions. Again, getting into sort of file level permissions is a real no-no if you can. It means that there's so much more admin needed if you need to start locking down things at an individual file level. And if you can bring that up to a higher level of folder permission and say, actually, this is whether it's a management report folder or any kind of sensitive information, whether that's maybe HR or whatever it is, and say this bit needs to be completely locked down just to these handful of people, then doing that at a folder basis is a great way to do it. So that can tie in with reviewing your file structures. And again, there is a slight difference between SharePoint and OneNote, because SharePoint is effectively the stuff that you want everyone to see, and OneNote in general is your, sorry, it says OneNote there, doesn't it? Wrong thing. OneDrive. There you go. OneDrive rather than OneNote there. OneDrive is effectively your My Documents, so the things that maybe you're just working on yourself that are not ready to go out to the big wide world yet, and you can share them from that location. But in general, we want to be using that sparingly and using SharePoint for anything that goes across the business, and therefore making sure everyone knows that.
One of the other key benefits of SharePoint as well and OneDrive is searching for data. It will search through, as its database, it can search through files and not only look at file names, but obviously look at the content of files. So if you're searching for data, it makes it much easier, much slicker, and a lot quicker than the traditional formats as well. And Phil mentioned about permissions there, but we can add extra level of permissions on for such things like data loss prevention that will stop people sharing or sending or copying certain types of information outside the organisation. So we can apply some fairly complex rules around data, types of data, and what can happen with that data, whether it can be shared, whether it can't be shared, or if it is shared, who's notified, and so forth. So you can do some really good stuff, certainly around GDPR and data loss, to really lock your data down and know exactly where it is, where it can go.
Yeah, cool. Right then, so on to the next one, which is OneNote. I obviously got excited on the last slide by putting OneNote in, because this is probably my favourite application that we use at HPP from the Office 365 suite. So again, nice simple explanation of this is it is a note-taking tool. If you've used it before, then you'll know exactly what I mean. If not, you might have come across things like Evernote before. But basically what it is a kind of a structured way of taking notes, and the whole idea is to replace physical notebooks basically. So the actual way of taking notes is nice and simple. I can type stuff in, create to-dos, add images, and ultimately I can share these documents and these notes with other people as well. And what I'm really doing is I am replacing physical notebooks. And when we think about the structure of physical notebooks, obviously normally they're kind of chronological. You make your notes from a meeting, you go into the next meeting, you make your next notes. If you're super organized, you might have dividers in there, or you might even have separate notebooks for every type of meeting. And if you do, and you're that organised, you'll know that finding your stuff becomes a little bit easier because you at least know what notebook to look into. Well, with OneNote, that's exactly what we're doing. So that first one on the left-hand side there, that we have highlighted board meeting, is an example of all the sort of notebooks that I can have. So each one literally being a physical different notebook in the real world. Once I go into that, I can then have different sections. So I can split that up by the meetings that we've had in different months, or even I can plan ahead and put things in for meetings that we're going to have. And then on the right hand side, I can have a selection of different notes from that meeting in different areas. Now this meeting in particular is how we run our board meetings here at HPP in Cameron. We do, if you like, proactively, we do in advance. So these are all set up, and then we go in as directors, as heads of departments, and we add our notes in before the meeting takes place. So we do our review of what's happened, we pop that into the meeting notes, and then we all get a chance to review and look at those meeting notes before the meeting itself. Then we take minutes in that meeting and we create an executive summary. And because we've all got access to those notebooks already, we can see exactly what's gone on. We can have action points assigned to us directly from that one place. And obviously we can go back to that nice and easily month by month to see what's happened and making sure everything's complete. So we find that's a really nice way of using that collaboratively and also creating a structure that works really well. And I think that OneNote has really been embraced across our business, and we use this collaboratively actually in advance of most meetings now. You'll see a pattern emerging in that all of these applications again are going to be accessed wherever, anywhere we want. So there is a desktop application for OneNote which works brilliantly, but we can access it also in a web browser, on a mobile phone, on a tablet, anything else like that. Does mean that if you go to an external event or a conference, then you can legitimately sit there on your phone taking notes, no problem whatsoever. Or you can take your tablet or you can take your laptop and you can start tapping away and creating those for the meeting, and that's going to instantly synchronize back to the full version of OneNote when you get back in the office. So really, really easy and really user friendly again. So why use it? Well, it replaced physical notebooks. If you're anything like me, it replaces one physical notebook that I would be constantly flicking through and trying to remember when that meeting took place or where I made that note, or was it the day that I forgot that notebook and put it in a different notebook. Or if you're a bit more organised, it means that you at least don't have to keep 20 different notebooks on your desk just in case you have to go into a different meeting. It provides structure to those as well, so it means that it's not just having that physical notebook, but then we can create sections within that and separate notes within those sections. So it actually gives us even more control over how we set them up. Searching and finding is really, really key again. So when you've had that meeting 3 months ago and you're trying to find out that to-do point that was assigned to you, you can search by keyword. It can bring up a list of notes that you've made that have that keyword in them. So you can go and find out what you should have done and make sure you do it in advance. And you can do it retrospectively. You can share stuff, but ideally you can drive collaboration ahead of meetings by sharing these notebooks out in advance and making sure people are preparing, reading notes for those meetings and making the best time that you can of the time that you have within those meetings themselves.
And of course, you can use some of the other add-on Microsoft technology. So it has voice recognition, which is very good. You can obviously talk into the notebook, and it will also do handwriting recognition as well and turn that into actual text as well. And obviously, you can add drawings in there and other attachments as well.
So when we launched this again was another great example of going, right, where do we have notebooks all over the place? How are we sharing these notes? Typically, before we launched this, they were being written in meetings and then someone had to type them up and send them around in email. So how many different types of meetings have we got? Where can we bring that all together? Shared meetings are a perfect place to start. Absolutely. If you're going to start it at one where you've got lots of people in and you can share that in advance. And also then use that same notebook to record the minutes and the action points. So rather than having separate, again, emails flying around, everyone's got access to that. So separate note in there, put the action points in, and when you get back to that meeting the next month, you can simply review that section of the previous month's minutes and tick that off as we go to make sure everyone's done what they promised to do. So again, really simple, really easy way to use it. Okay. So let's get into one that is probably less used. So if you have been using parts of Office 365, in our experience, less people are utilising the power of Power BI. So we want to talk a little bit about how we've used Power BI, because this is a bit of a blank piece of paper in terms of what do you want it to do. So it's ultimately a reporting tool. So it can pull in multiple databases into one location, and it can put together various different charts, graphs, reports and things like that. So hopefully, as one of our customers, you may have seen something similar to this, because we use these now to report back to our customers on our performance as a software or IT support company. So what we give our account managers access to when they're going out to see our customers is the statistics relevant to that customer in particular. So I've got the ones on the screen. This is just our internal figures that we use for demo purposes, but ultimately we can create a report dedicate it to someone. And what we have that you probably never see is a little menu selection in the background where we can filter right down. So we can filter on a specific customer, we can filter on a date range. We can even then drill into separate types of areas of our business, different ticket statuses, and even right on the side that specific thing that a support call was made about. So we can really tailor that into what it is we need to do. The ability to create different charts and graphs and all of that is pretty vast. So whatever you want to create, whatever you want to see, you can do pretty much in terms of how things look. There are some amazing examples online of how data has been pulled into this and spread about onto various different graphs. There's sports teams, I've seen basketball teams in America using this to analyze kind of movement of players around a basketball court and stuff like that. So as long as the data exists and you can imagine a way to use it and to get value out of it, then Power BI is going to give you that option to set it up and to use it however you want. I think the big thing really is, probably on the next slide, is the fact that this can come from multiple sources now. So integration in software has obviously been a big thing for a long time. We've always championed it, but at the same point, we are fully aware that it isn't always possible. There are separate systems going on within your business, and sometimes you have to pick the best of breed solution in different areas of your business to run that effectively. And when you end up with two separate databases, what you can end up with is the lack of ability to report on them or to compare data between them. So how is one thing affecting something else in a different side of the business? And this is that perfect way to bring these things in. We can do things with reports, so we can report back on, for example, what happened last month and what happened the month before, or we can do live views as well. So another usage that we have here at HBP in Cameron is our wall boards within our offices. If you've walked around our offices before, you will know we have these up in front of every support team. It tells us things like the number of calls we've got on at the moment, how they're assigned to each individual engineer, so that the management team can make sure that the right engineers are assigned the right amount of tickets at any one time. No one person is snowed under and no one sat there twiddling their thumbs effectively. So we can use them from a real live management point of view to make things are working as we expect. It does make you think and say, well, what areas can we not report on right now? We can't compare this figure with that figure because they're in separate systems, but how valuable would that be? And this allows you to do that straight away. It also allows you to create reports that maybe don't exist as default out of your current system, so that they're already not set up, or you've never even thought about it. And in some cases, what we found is that this is actually a much more cost-effective way to report at this level. There are some very expensive and complicated reporting tools out there that tie in with specific systems, and from our experience so far, Power BI does pretty much everything you need it to do, and pulling stuff in from wherever you need it to be. So the first tip to launch are, this is a great one to kind of put your thinking cap on and say, do you know what aren't we reporting on here? So what are we reporting on, and what do I still not know, even though I've got that information? Kind of asking the so what questions, where does that come from, or why is this information here in the first place, and what could possibly be affecting it? Considering areas that aren't currently reported on. So our report for customers, for example, for our account management, was a report that didn't exist in the slightest before we looked at Power BI. So it made us think and say, well, we go out there and we tell everyone how brilliant we are and how quickly we fix everyone's problems, but how do we ever prove it? And we used to do that by saying to everyone, well, this is our overall performance. This is how long it takes us to fix a problem when it comes in across the business, or how long it takes us to reply to a phone call. But of course, people don't care what you're doing for everyone else. They care about what's happening for them. So this allowed us to drill right down into that information and find out exactly what was going on with every single customer. But the final point is, don't go over the top. So do take this one step at a time. Power BI is incredibly powerful. It can bring things in from all over the place, but start basic, build up some reports, and make sure that you kind of know where you're going before you try and go and create something super complicated. And also that the report is worth doing. So you don't want to be reporting for the sake of reporting. You want to be able to have some actions off the back of that, so that you can use it effectively. And that's Power BI.
Yeah, I think with Power BI, I think that there's real scope. It does allow to bring a lot of data together, whether that be static data or out of multiple systems, bring them together into one dashboard. And we've been in and helped a lot of businesses where certainly people around the finance and operations team probably spend days and days creating reports at the end of every month, where we can really streamline this report gathering and making by just linking this to spreadsheets, linking it to databases, pulling system out, and almost having a real-time system do a lot of that report, a lot of that number crunching for you, enabling you to make quicker and easier decisions with less overheads, really.
Cool, right, and then our final one in this session today is Microsoft Teams. So this is the newest product that we've taken on at HBP, and again, it's probably taken us a little while to find the real benefit out of there, but we're starting to see how this can really be a great way of bringing all those other elements that we've talked about, or certainly a good chunk of them, together in one place to make sort of collaboration again even better, to streamline the way people work, to make meetings more efficient. Because what it ultimately is a bit of a hub. So it sits right in the middle of all of these Office 365 applications and gives you the ability to pull through the information you want into a single dashboard. It's a bit of a tricky one to get your head around so far, so let me show you kind of an example. So in this scenario here, we have a group within our marketing team. It's not a particularly interesting one because it's just as it was being set up, but it shows a kind of an activity log of what's been going on, of people adding new things into it. And you can see there at the top a selection of links through to other areas. So there's key files within this group. There's a document library that is a link directly to a part of SharePoint where we keep documents related to this group. Something called Jobs, which we're using a product we're not talking about today, but it's something called Microsoft Planner, which is kind of if you've used Asana or Basecamp or Trello or any of those project management tools, it's Microsoft's version of that. A link to the key part of the website that we talk about, and a link to the OneNote where we keep all of our shared notes from this particular group. So this allows us to flick around into different areas. So for example, in this particular one, we jump into the job section and we can see that we've got all of these jobs lined up within this group. But quite easily, with just one click of the button, I can jump to these different sections within this group and see things really, really easily. Again, I can comment on those different areas, but you also in that first slide, there's also a discussion area as well. So all the people in the team can have discussions about that specific kind of section. Again, completely mobile based as well. So there's an application that launches on startup for us and notifies us if anything gets commented on our group. So if we get tagged into something or a new job gets assigned to us, but equally I can have an application on my phone so I know what's going on. I can interact with stuff from there. Obviously we can attach files and access files and all of that in these conversations, as well as all the different areas as well. So why are we going to use this? Well, it brings everything into one place. So this is the perfect way to kind of complete that collaboration. So all these different things going on, these different meetings, these different notes, different files on SharePoint or wherever it is, we can say, right, let's bring them into one place. Let's layer over the top of that an area for conversation. And actually, one of our next steps in the future, jumping ahead, is bringing in some of those areas from Yammer to actually be the conversations within Teams. So that's our kind of next step of bringing the conversation piece that exists in Yammer fully into this piece as well. So we have that all set up in one place, completing that kind of full circle for us. It's also worth noting that Microsoft are going to get rid of Skype for Business in 2021. So if you're using the instant messaging or the video conferencing, that is going to shift completely over to Teams. I think it's middle of 2021. So I think we've got about 18 months or so left. So it's not happening imminently, but it is something that you kind of going to be forced down the route of. So it's a good one to get on board with, even if you have to just use it for that in the end, but tons of benefit for it. Tips to launch. So a lot of people in our organisation, and if I'm honest, me included, struggled to get my head round where this would work until I saw someone else using it and going, right, I could do that, and I could do that, and I could do that, bring it all into one place, and now works a treat for us. So running a trial with an existing user of your Office 365 applications is a great way to start. Ideally, someone that's using a few of them, and then they get the benefit of bringing them into one place. In our experience, sales and marketing is not a bad place to start. The reason being that sales will work in different areas, whether that's on different customer projects, or marketing will work on different projects, or they'll have things sectioned up by quarters, and potentially it's going to have the least impact if something doesn't quite work for you. For example, you don't want to be chucking all of your customer projects on there straight away and then all of a sudden realize that people aren't posting on there when they should be. With sales and marketing, you can back out of that quite quickly to your previous ones and reassess and restructure that. But it's worked really well for us because there's a lot of files bouncing around, there's a lot of meetings and notes going around, and there's a lot of conversation generally around how to approach things. That's our experience, best place to start. And you really need to be using at least 2 of the Office 365 apps to make this work outside of Teams. If you're just going to use Teams and you're only using OneNote, then all you're going to end up doing is bringing OneNote into Teams, and nothing else is really going to happen there. But the minute you're using OneNote and you're using SharePoint, for example, then you can at least start to bring some of those tools into one place. But it's a bit of the more the merrier, and in fact, it really comes into its own the more applications you use.
And just to remember, all the applications we've been talking about, so Teams, OneNote, Yammer and everything is available both inside and outside the organisation. So with permissions, you can invite external contractors in, you can invite customers or suppliers in to collaborate on documents. So with things like Teams and OneNote, we can be sharing documents with people, allowing them to collaborate on them, but not actually giving them a copy of the document. And if we want to revoke that, we can revoke that permission straight away, and they no longer have that document or that information. So again, it gives you much more control over your data as to where it is and who can see it.
Cool, so we've run through these 5 areas, I suppose 6 products if you've got OneNote and SharePoint in there. So what we're going to do now is give you an overview of how the licensing works. Depending on your role in the organisation, you may know what you've got. You may have a mix of some of these licenses within your organisation already. I think we've got 2 slides of the way that Microsoft kind of set up their licensing that Tony's just going to talk you through here.
Yeah, so there's really 2 sort of key licensing stacks. There are others, but we'll just focus on the 2 common ones, which is the business plans. So this is aimed at the sort of the small to medium business, but really anybody sub 250 users is absolutely fine on this plan. And you get the three core packages. So business being your common office applications installed locally, so your PowerPoints, your Word, Excel, and just OneNote. Your business premium gives you the same, but added on to that, you obviously get your email exchange server, you get SharePoint and Teams. And then going on to business essentials. So in business essentials, you're getting the services, so Exchange, OneDrive and SharePoint, but you're only getting the web-based versions of the applications. And in some cases that may suffice. You can get away with and you only need the web-based version of Word or Excel. They are basically cut down versions of the products you traditionally use. They act in the same way, but there's some functionality removed around macros and certain things like that as well. So they're kind of the business plans, and then you go on to the enterprise plans, which, as you would probably guess, would be the same sort of structure. So E1, E3, and E5, and as you can see there, you've got kind of the same structure. So E1, you're getting all those services, but you'll note you now get Yammer included in there, and something called Stream, which we haven't touched on today. But you only get the web-based version of the apps, and then moving on to E3 and then up to E5, which then has Power BI in as well. But you also get the on-premise version of the standard applications as well. So as you can see, there's key structures. You can see the kind of pricing differences on there. But you can see you do really get a lot, and I suppose that the services include there. That's really the tip of the iceberg. I think there's at last count there's over 35 different services included, and some of the smaller ones like Planner the video channel and things like that we haven't touched on today, but they're included in most plans as standard anyway.
I think they don't even mention OneNote on these slides now, do they? But
No.
they're included in
Correct,
plan
yeah.
as well.
So there's a lot more than that is included, but they're classing those as kind of the core services.
Am I right in thinking, Tony, that Power BI is one of those ones that can be licensed separately as
yeah,
well?
So a lot of these you can bolt on separately. So Power BI, for argument's sake, I think it is roughly about £10 a month. And so some of these are very cost effective from there as well.
So if you're just using a wallboard within your office to display information, you could just buy a Power BI license.
Single Power BI license, correct, and license it from there, yeah.
Yeah, cool. So again, these are obviously, we're giving you these as an indication. Appreciate there's a lot of information and a lot of icons on these screens, but I suppose going on to now of what you can do and how we can help. So first thing, check your current subscription. You probably have some of these, unless you're on just kind of the exchange-based, email-based packages. Chances are that there's applications within your subscription that you don't need to pay a penny more for that you can use straight away. The second one is quick wins. So we've told you lots of different bits and lots of different areas of your business. Whatever kind of you've written the most notes about or nodded along the most or thought that's the one, that's the place to start. The one where you've got an issue or the thing that you can roll out the easiest is probably the place to start, because then you can get some traction going with it and then you can start looking at the other products later on. And also plan. So yes, this is software, but as you've probably seen, this is a software package that heavily involves people. There is only so much we can do as a software provider, an IT provider. We can set up Yammer, we can set up teams and notebooks, but ultimately the structures in place, encouraging people to use it, making sure people get involved and use it in the right way is something a little bit out of the scope of software and much more down to the people and the processes within your organisation. So what we can do is we can discuss and talk to you about these in more detail, whether that's myself and Tony or any of our account managers or support people. As we say, we use these across the business so people know how these work and how they can be used. We can provide licensing, so all of the licensing that Tony's covered just a few seconds ago can all be purchased and installed and obviously renewed through us. And we can assist with the technical setup of all applications as well. So if you do want to roll these out, you want to get these up and running, then that is absolutely within our remit of what we can do for you as your IT supplier. Okay, just before we flick on to the questions and things, I'll just run through what else is happening this week. So it is our week of webinars. So today, you've missed it already, but it is recorded. It will be on our website. We had a session around stock management. Obviously this session as well has been recorded as well. In fact, it's worth pointing out we're using Microsoft Office Teams, if it wasn't obvious, to run this webinar. So we didn't even mention that as a bit of functionality. This is new to us because this is the second webinar after this morning that we've run on it, but hopefully it's worked fine. And like I say, all recorded, and we'll put that up on our website as well. For anyone in the manufacturing industry, we're running a session tomorrow at 10 o'clock on Advanced Business Cloud Essentials, which is one of the packages we provide to help manufacturing businesses manage all of their business processes. On Wednesday afternoon, any of our Pegasus account software users have a session coming up on reporting within XRL, the reporting tool for Pegasus. On Thursday, quite a relevant one for anyone that's on this session, to be honest, which is two-factor authentication. So we have seen over the past year or so several instances of what's the correct term?
Well, credential harvesting, basically, so someone getting access to your system by simply obtaining a username and password. So adding a second factor like you have with your banking is a real surefire way of preventing against that. So we're going to be doing a session on that on Thursday. So
if you're an Office 365 user, that's not a bad one to get on with as well, if you can fit it into your schedule this week. And then on Thursday afternoon, again, for any Exchequer users this time, we have the newest add-on to that product, which is the Exchequer mobile product. So if you're an Exchequer user, That's quite an exciting one because it's the first time there's been a new module for Exchequer for a little while now. So really good product and something to get on board. Okay, so that's the week that we've got. Hopefully that's been useful to you. We'll have a quick look at the Q&As now and see if there's anything we can answer. If people have got questions that they haven't asked so far, the Q&A looks like two little conversation things up in, I think it should be on the sidebar. So fire them through there, or failing that, you can always contact us afterwards. We have got a question though, which...
Yep, so can Power BI pull data from Pegasus? Yes, it can. There's two ways we can do this. If you're on the SE version of Pegasus, the SQL version, we can dip directly into the data. If not, we'd have to pull it out with XRL and then pull it straight into Power BI from there. So there's a couple of different ways we can do it, but yeah, in short, we can. If you want to know more about that, then quite happy to have a discussion further about how that looks and how that can happen.
Cool. There's literally just one question on there at the moment, so we will give it a couple of minutes in case anyone's still typing their question. But if you don't have any questions yourself, and you don't want to stick around to hear anyone else's, then thank you very much. Thank you for your time. As I say, we have been recording this webinar, so we'll be putting it out on our website and on normal social media channels. But thank you very much for your time, and have a good afternoon. Thank you. Right, if anyone's still on, thank you very much for your time. It doesn't look like we've got any more questions, so we'll end the session here. Thank you very much.